This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the first podcast of Strangers No More. Strangers No More is a weekly program for all, following the Come Follow Me curriculum. It is a place to become friends and grow into a worldwide family. We take Elder Gong at his word when he told us there are to be no strangers, no foreigners, no rich and poor, no outside others, and accept his invitation to change the world for the better from the inside out, one person, one family, one neighborhood at a time.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm Maggie Slighte, and I am here with Andrew Mair, Schleicher, and Bradley Talbot. And we are Strangers No More. And actually, coming into this recording, except for one very short meeting, the only two of us that knew each other before this, except for some minor coincidences that we'll discuss later, were Dennis and myself. Now, I've been receiving an impression from the Holy Spirit since about June or July that we needed to have an LGBTQ friendly approach to the Come Follow Me curriculum. So this is what this is trying to be. I am Maggie Slighte. I am 54 years old, and I identify as asexual. And we'll go into more as to why later.
That's right. My name is Andrew Mair. I'm an author. I wrote a book called Tales of a Paperboy, a Christmas story, which is out right now. I guess I'm this token straight guy on this podcast. I kind of represent that point of view, and I'm just happy to be here.
That's exciting. This has truly been a blessing to know Maggie, and to we actually picked each other up on social media, so it's kind of cool. We've never met, but she accompanied me as I traveled across the country from Connecticut to Utah to do firesides and devotionals. I'm the best-selling author of a book called Is He Nuts? Why Would a Gay Man Join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And back when this was, when a general authority had asked me to write this, it was originally supposed to be called, Is He Nuts? Why Would a Gay Man Become Mormon? But now we don't use that word anymore because Satan, get behind us.
My name's Bradley Talbot. I'm a gay Latter-day Saint is how I like to introduce myself typically. I'm a BYU student as well. I'm hoping to graduate in April. I'm 23 years old. I live in Pleasant Grove, Utah. For now, we'll see what happens after I graduate. And I'm super excited about being able to participate in this project. I feel like all growing up, and especially recently within the last few years, I've had lots of different voices telling me which way to go, that I can't fully live my spirituality or my sexuality. And I haven't had many opportunities to be able to kind of embrace both. And so I hope that this show will be able to help me do that.
We are very, very happy to have you here, Bradley. And Andrew, why don't you start us off with giving us a little bit of your background of your testimony?
I think my testimony began, obviously I borrowed it from my parents for years, but then I remember in junior high school, I had a seminary teacher, and he started the year of the book. It was ninth grade, talking about the Book of Mormon, and he started the year in Moroni, even though you should start in Nephi, but he started in Moroni, and he did that so that he could talk about Moroni's promise at that beginning of the year, the idea that you can ask God and you can obtain a knowledge of these things yourself. And so my first shot at that was this expectation that I'm going to kneel down tonight, and I'm going to have a spiritual awakening, and it's just going to shoot into me. And it didn't. And over the course of several months, I was bothered by that. And over time, I started to understand that I hadn't done the work that Moroni told me to do. I hadn't gone and read more in the scriptures. I hadn't looked at from the time from Adam till now. I hadn't actually pondered these things in my heart. And so as I did, I got more and more the desire to have this understanding of it, and I was still expecting something big. And finally, I got to the point that I would have accepted my brother walking into the room and saying, "The church is true. Now go to bed." But what I realized is that the Spirit was speaking to me in such small ways, and I just knew it was true. And so probably by Christmas that year, I had this understanding, and I just knew. I like woke up one day and I'm like, "Do you know it's true?" Yes, I do. And ever since then, I have known. And so even though later I struggled with my ability to care about myself on whether I wanted to follow the church, there's times in my life when that I could never deny that I knew that it was true. So that's my testimony.
Dennis, how about you?
Well, Andrew, that's really exciting to hear, because one thing I love about this, putting together this show with Maggie and watching it start from basically the ground up, is we all come from different backgrounds. You have 2 converts and 2 people who were born into the church. And Maggie and I are converts of the church. And so where does my testimony stand from? Well, I guess it started when I stole the Book of Mormon, not realizing that the Marriott gave them out for free. And unfortunately, the interesting story is the stolen Book of Mormon went on tour, and it was color coded with tabs, and it was signed by general authorities, all hundreds of missionaries I served with all over the world. And apparently somebody decided to steal the stolen Book of Mormon. So I don't know where it is. And even to the point in the front of it, it said, "If lost, call, we'll pay money." And then stealing the Book of Mormon, and then within a few weeks was an answer to the missionaries. In this church I'm sitting in right now, we're praying for a walk-in and into the chapel. And I was that walk-in. So I'm super excited this year of Come Follow Me, because I invite people to learn, gain a testimony along with myself. Even though I have a testimony to the church, I know the church is true, and my testimony gets stronger. And I cannot deny the blessing of being a part of this church. So anybody out there is struggling with the testimony, or struggling with feeling that they want to leave the church, or that they just know they feel lost, they're looking for a home, this is not a church organization, it's a family.
Bradley, how about yourself?
So my testimony, I feel like I am still, obviously we're all still growing our testimonies, but I feel like I'm still pretty in the heat of a lot of my journey with my spirituality. I would say that growing up, I gained like an intellectual testimony. By the time I had served my mission, I felt like I knew everything and I knew it was true. But it wasn't until I had a lot of experiences after my mission coming home that I think I gained like more of a conversion testimony, where I had to really wrestle with a lot of hard questions about my future and about what God wanted me to do, what I wanted to do, because I didn't even know. And I can't necessarily think of any time where I had this big moment of, oh yes, this is it, and that was my testimony. I can think of times where there's been small little moments that have just gradually helped me to feel God's love, helped me to feel more confident in myself. It's a process, learning to love myself and be a student at BYU and be living in Utah, and having to learn all these different things that I wasn't prepared for, and I didn't know if I really wanted to learn them just yet. I can remember a couple times where I've prayed to God and asked God, why did you make me this way? Why am I this way? What is my purpose? And just feeling an overwhelming amount of love that has really strengthened my testimony. of God, of my Savior, and that they not only like love me for being gay, like despite being gay or whatever, or in spite of all that, they love me because I'm gay, and they love me for who I am. So, and I'm
People
sure
on
I'll
the
share more.
podcast can't hear me nodding my head, right?
Yeah. But you don't want to erase who you are. You want to I mean, I had somebody on Instagram say to me the other day, continue to let your lights shine bright. Continue to let, I had a temple president buy me this rainbow pride band for my Apple Watch, and then it's hooked up just like that. For those that are watching the YouTube clip, they can see it. And I even had a mission president say, well, I hope you don't mind. My wife and I bought you a rainbow bow tie and rainbow socks and a rainbow handkerchief because the missionaries are complaining you're not dressing gay enough to do home teachings. And I'm like, I never thought I would join the LDS church and be told you're not dressing gay enough. Like, now I look like rainbow bright with everything in my wristband from Apple and stuff when I walk down the streets of Utah. But that's where I feel at home.
I'm going to give a little bit of a different experience. If Bradley, are you done with yours?
Well, I just wanted to add to that, just a little, like, it reminds me of the misconception that people have, like, oh, as long as you don't act on it. And it's just like what Dennis was saying, like, if I don't act on it, then I'm not being compassionate. I'm not loving people. I'm not being supportive. Like, acting on it is who I am. Like, I can't not act on that. And it's so much more than what people think being gay is. And so I love that you brought that up, because I think
people get confused with the term sexual orientation, thinking it only talks about a sexual act. And therein lies a lot of confusion.
Yeah, a lot.
So, and part of that confusion, I came to the church when I was 46 years old after a very long history of living a lot of different lifestyles. Although I had been married for 22 years, and from the outside, it may have looked like it was a, cishet marriage and everything was plain, and, it wasn't. We were poly. And when I came to the church long after that divorce, and after a lot of struggling, I was at my lowest. I got on my knees and I asked Heavenly Father, I said, how do you get closer to Christ? Literally, those were the words I asked. How do you get closer to Christ? Because I had gone to a potluck of a few weeks before that with friends that was at a church. It's actually out at the Stake Center, but I didn't know that at the time. And I wasn't in that area anymore, but I kept having this feeling that I needed to be closer to those people that were at that church, and I needed to know more. And so I finally, after 2 weeks of trying to call the phone number that was listed on Google for the meeting house, by the way, we need to forward those numbers to missionaries because people are trying to get a hold of us. I know I tried for 2 weeks. Nobody answered the phone for 2 weeks. So instead, I got on my knees because I knew God would answer me, because God had always answered me for 46 years, even when I didn't want to hear the answers. And when I got on my knees and I asked him how to become closer to Christ, I was all of a sudden filled with this impression that I am a member of a church. Well, one of the things that I wish I would have known then that I do know now is that you can actually text message and messenger with missionaries anytime, day or night.
Yes.
And that's what I would have taken advantage of if I'd have known it existed, or if it did,
knowing you
back in 2013.
You all blowing up my box.
Sorry about that.
That one out.
Literally. iPhone with Messenger is blowing up. So
anyway, back to my testimony. I don't know how much we got. I got down on my knees on March 6th, 2013, and I asked Heavenly Father how to get closer to Christ. And the answer that I got was that I had to become a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And if I didn't, I may lose that small, still voice that had guided me. And that petrified me. It absolutely and completely petrified me. It scared me more than the idea, and excuse the noises in the background because my dogs are having some sort of a tussle. And it's getting loud. But I lost where I was.
you knew you had to join the church.
I knew I had to join the church. I couldn't lose that small, still voice. But I was also very afraid because I knew that it was male missionaries, or I thought that it was male missionaries that represented the church. Now, I had been abused by men since I was a baby. And the idea of inviting two young men in to teach me about a God that I had a personal relationship with was a little bit disconcerting to me. But it was what Heavenly Father wanted. So I steeled up myself and I said, I can do this. I called up my granddaughter's other grandma and I said, okay, Mary, how do you get the missionaries to your house? And after explaining to her what happened, and she said to me, she said, what a testimony. And I said, what's a testimony?
What's a testimony?
And how do you get the missionaries to your house? And she said, I'll call my elders. And I envisioned this underground secret network of elders. Okay, because I mean, we lived like 30 miles away from each other. We weren't in the same town. I was like, okay, if you say so. So I'd say about 5 minutes later, I got a phone call and it was from elders, and they talked to me for a minute and got my address, and we're not in your area, but we'll find out who is. And that was the end of that phone call. And then like 10 minutes later, I got a knock on the door. Okay. So this was all within a half an hour of my prayer.
This is the underground network that, uses an amazing technology called the telephone.
Yes, the telephone. The rotary.
So I get this knock on my door and I just steady myself and get ready to open the door to men. And I open the door to the two most beautiful young ladies I'd ever seen in my entire life. And I didn't even know we had sisters. But you know what? Here's something that I found out after all of this. After I'd been baptized, which happened 3 weeks later, after everything, after the girls had transferred out, because there had not been sister missionaries in that mission that anybody could remember ever until 2 weeks before I made my phone call.
Yeah.
3 months after I was baptized, they were transferred out, and there's still no sisters in that mission. God knows my name.
He does.
And I leave that testimony with you in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen. That's powerful. Well, Maggie, there are boys and there are girls, so there will always be the polar opposite. There are sisters and there are brothers.
Let's move on that note, some family composition conversation. Bradley, why don't you start us off with what does the family that you spend time with look like?
So right now, I'm currently living with my parents and my siblings. I'll be moving to Provo for my last semester, starting January. But I have 5 younger siblings, so there's a lot of us. There's 3 boys and 3 girls. I'm the oldest, so I have a lot of pressure on me, it feels like, to be the example. But yeah, it's great. I've always lived here in Pleasant Grove, or I guess we have, and sometimes things get pretty crazy because there's a lot of young kids running around and friends, and we have a dog who just had puppies last week. So now
What kind of dog?
It's a lab. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty exciting, but there's lots going on here, so it's kind of insane sometimes.
I have 2 lab mixes. That's why I have to.
Oh, nice.
Well, coming from a big family, that's the Latter-day Saint way, you know, because every time I go to, I say I'm landing in the planet of Utah, and it's it's a different planet, but it's my home and I love it. And I just, but members loan me cars and I never have to pay for, I was out in Utah for 9.5 months last year. Oh, Maggie's going, stop.
Don't say it.
Don't say it. Yeah.
It makes me cringe every time you
Don't
please
say
no.
it. No, I was going to say the Latter-day Saint van. It's like I get these huge trucks that you can like house 40 people in, and it's like the clown car just never stops.
Yep, I grew up with that. I grew up that way.
Yeah.
Well, Dennis, since you volunteered, why don't you go next? And what does your family look like? And you've already mentioned also that you are also gay.
Yes. So I'm a gay convert to the Church of Jesus Christ, and I had no idea that I was going to have a larger picture or calling than when I joined the church. I would have probably canceled my baptism. But seriously, like if they would have told me what they, I'm going to be, when the missionaries, we're like, oh my gosh, we found a gay. When all the gays are leaving the church over this issue. And I'm like, they're calling me to do home teachings. And I'm like, sure, but what's a home teaching? Like it's just, so yeah. So my family is really the members of the church. It's returning missionaries. It's doing service to others because, being a convert, my parents, I wrote about this in my book when I appeared on Sally Jesse Raphael back in January 5th, 1990, and then Larry King Live, and I did the whole talk show circuit. It says in here, Dennis's parents won't speak to him because he's gay. And there should be another picture saying now his parents don't speak to him because he's a member of the church. So, but yeah, it's so my father, before I left for Utah in July of 2019 for 4.5 months of doing devotionals and book signings for the church, I said to my father, I dropped off my little Shih Tzu, Miss Pickles, what are your concerns? And he says, well, son, your mother and I are concerned you're going to come home with a greyhound full of multiple husbands. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Dad, that's not only a gay joke, but that's a Mormon joke.
And he got them all in there.
He got them all in there. And then it's like my stake and members start to find out, and they're all like, oh, my husband's going to get on that bus. And, oh, yeah, we're going to get on the bus. And I'm like, no, we're not adding to the stereotype. What am I going to do when I say, Mom, meet Peter, James, and John, Luke, Paul, Matthew, Joseph Smith, Nephi, Nephi, Macaroni, and so it's been a contentious relationship with my parents, but they are Christian. They're fundamentalist, born again. And, it strengthened my testimony into our gospel because they used to be First Assembly of God Almighty, and that was a franchise. And I guess the bishop, the owners, didn't like paying the franchise fees. So he went to Brazil for a few weeks, came back and said, I'm now a bishop. And so they broke away, and they're now Crossroads Community Cathedral. So it's just further evidence that we are in the true church, that our church is true because it shows how many churches are breaking away. And so, but I am trying to lead by example to them, and I really would love for them to partake in the blessings, especially, I had a younger brother, Darren. He was my best friend and one of my revelations to coming into the church. And he died in 2004 from a drug overdose. And I communicate with him all the time. And to be able to perform his ordinance in the temple in Provo City Center was one of the most special and spiritual and sacred experiences I've ever done. So I guess as far as my family is concerned, a lot of them are on the other side of the veil, but it's basically you guys, it's members of the church, because that's where I feel my feet are cemented.
Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Thank you. Well, I'll give you a little bit of my family before we'll move on to Andrew's family composition. My family, I am a grandma. I birthed and raised 3 kids, and I am expecting my 5th grandchild any day. And we're trying to actually get a few of these episodes in the can right now so that there isn't an interruption, because my granddaughter is expected right around the holiday. But as far as living in my home and my family, besides my granddaughters and their other grandma, none of my family is in the church. None of my family actually goes to any church. But the ones that do go to church and that really like to run in the back field that's behind the stake center are my 2 labs. And they keep me company. So and I'm going to then move on to Andrew and let him answer this question.
So I'm I'm married, been married 20 years. Got married in the Bountiful Temple. It's my 2nd marriage. I have 2 kids, but those are fur kids. So my little dogs, Mary and Sky, we were not ever able to have kids, and so we adopted dogs, and it changed me. It actually put me in a position of having to care for something beyond just. I mean, Christy and I lived for like 16 years as really good roommates. And once you have something else to care for that you both focus on, it just changes you. It's just all of a sudden you have to, and it wasn't these 2 dogs that actually did it. It was a dog named Buddy who we were coming home from stake conference and almost hit him with our car. And he was mostly blind. He had been abandoned and I'll have to show some pictures. I mean, he was such a small dog, but you wouldn't know it because his hair had grown out so big, and he looked like the Shaggy dog, but he was a Shih Tzu. So anyway, changed us.
Miss Pickles was a Shih Tzu. I love Shih Tzus.
Oh yeah. So, and we currently have a Shih Tzu Chihuahua mix. That's Sky, and we have a Cockapoo, Mary, who pretty much lives underneath my desk at any given moment. She just decided once we adopted her that I was her favorite, and so she sometimes in bed will actually crowd out Mom because her place is next to Dad. So that's that. But I grew up in a large family, so I grew up in Ogden, Utah. My mom and dad, we had 5 kids. So and my dad passed away in 2004, and so a big change in our family came when my mom got remarried to a member of another church, so the Seventh-day Adventists, and he's been a wonderful part of our family, and it's created this opportunity for us to learn more and to kind of open that up a bit. So,
well, I just wanted to point out something, because the title of this episode was drafted on my little notepad, Finding Our Commonalities, and I think I just found one. We all mentioned dog. Not only do we have God in common, we have dog in God.
There's only it's the same letters. Just switch them.
Yeah, just flip
Yeah.
them.
That's true.
You don't believe in God, believe in dogs. So we can get there if you can at least start with one or the other.
Yeah.
If you believe in dogs, you will end up believing in God.
I agree.
Yeah. Agreed.
So moving on from who we are to where we are. And Dennis, I'm going to let you start because you actually already mentioned where you are.
Yes. So I live in Glastonbury, Connecticut. It's a suburb of Hartford. But the missionaries tell me I'm Utah friendly, whatever that means. Apparently, when you have two companions from Utah, I guess you don't get fed as well on the East Coast because the families are like, oh, another set of missionaries from Utah. Not on my watch. The families of their parents, of the elders and sisters that I feed and take care of, make sure their calendars are full, say, I sent you home. I sent you a medium and you returned home an extra large. So they do get fed well. But I do spend more time in Utah, in the planet of Utah, than I do in Connecticut. So I will end up in Utah someday. It's just that I'm waiting for his message.
And Bradley, you also already mentioned where you are, so I'll let you reiterate.
Yeah,
that.
I'm in Utah County, specifically Pleasant Grove right now. Depending on where I'm staying, what apartments, I've gone to Provo and Linden and Orem, all over the place. So Utah County is where I call home.
What we in Ogden call Happy Valley.
What was that? Sorry.
I said what we in Ogden call Happy Valley.
Oh, yeah.
The reason I was shaking my head at Utah County is because my only legal experience in Utah County is having had a really heavy speeding ticket from that county. Don't go over the speed limit on the highways, even if you don't see a cop. They could be coming the other direction, and they do that UE really well. Andrew, how about you? Where are you from?
So I grew up in Ogden, Utah. And I lived there until about 5 years ago. And my job brought me to Round Rock, Texas, just north of Austin. So I've been here for 5 years, and my job has me traveling. So even though actually this year has been nice, I've actually been able to spend time in Round Rock, because prior to that, I spent more time everywhere else in the country, but my wife was here. So.
Well, and I, as you can probably see from the picture that I have as my background, which is actually one that I took this summer, I live in the Pacific Northwest, specifically Olympia, Washington, which is the capital city of Washington. And I'm going to go on to our next bit, which is what is our nearest temple? And even though I haven't been able to visit there, since I was engaged, that's a whole big story. I just now realized the last time that I was on temple grounds was becoming engaged in late May. So anyway, that being said, how about you, Bradley? What's your closest temple?
My closest temple is the Mount Timpanogos. It's like really close to my house. I can walk there, and so sometimes I do just for fun.
I love Mount Timpanogos Temple, especially the dark wood and the high mirrors. And like the peninsula effect. So yeah,
it's super pretty.
It's cool.
Okay, Andrew, how about you?
So my closest temple is to San Antonio geographically, but the one that's closest to my heart is actually two, is Bountiful, where I got married, and the Ogden Temple, which is where I took out my endowments, and I was actually in the old version of the Ogden Temple, but then even the new one, I was there during the reconstruction of it and during the open house. So that's the temple that's really the closest to my heart, is the Ogden Temple.
And
I have
Dennis.
I have Ogden Book of Mormon socks by BOM. I'll wear them next time.
So we've decided that one thing will be to every episode to see what socks Dennis and Bradley are wearing, because if you look at my socks, it's either going to be white or black, but we should ask me each time, is it white or black?
Okay, Dennis, show us your socks.
Provo City Center temples by BOM. They're awesome. The bomb. But anyway, now I'm going to have to like, ooh, I just pulled a muscle. So my temple is Hartford, and I am minutes from there. And it's beautiful. It's magical. The one I almost started an LGBT protest at with 500 to 1,000 people, but we won't go there.
And if listeners and viewers look really closely at our logo, you'll see all 4 of the temples that are closest to us surrounding the Salt Lake Temple represented in our logo. So, in moving on a little bit closer to home, want to talk about our wards in our, well, actually, we're not going to talk about, well, moving on to callings until we talk about what we do. So let's just talk about our wards quickly. I'm in Olympia 2nd Ward. Andrew?
Stony Point, the Stony Point Ward, just Stony Point Ward.
Dennis?
Glastonbury, Connecticut.
Bradley?
I'm currently in the Mount Mahogany 5th Ward, as long as I'm living with my parents, but I'll go to a BYU ward when I move to Provo in January.
You remember the times, you probably don't, but when in Utah, they used to just all have like one city and then like a whole lot of numbers, like the Pleasant Grove 175th.
Yeah, when I was in Provo living in an apartment, my ward was like 130 something. Like,
yeah, I grew up in Ogden 60th Ward. That was our ward, and now it's the Birch Creek 5th Ward. And I'm like, oh, I loved the bigger number. It's too bad.
Yeah,
go big or go home, like my hair.
That's right.
That's really exciting to me, being in an area where there isn't a lot of church members, because I mean, we literally can watch the membership grow and shrink and grow and shrink, and it's a living being, the population, because of the reorganization that happens almost every couple of years.
Yeah, well, and I have a testimony to that, because a year ago in September, we had a ward split. And then a year ago, this past September, we had a stake split. So, and they added another stake. So I think that, well, everybody says, Dennis, you're baptizing too many people. So it just, but no, I'm not doing the work, a lot of work in Connecticut. It's a lot of baptisms all over the world.
Well, since you brought it up, that goes right into our next topic, which is, what are our callings? Dennis, you start us off.
So I am the ward mission leader, and I work, but I have an unofficial and elders quorum presidency. I have, what am I? The first counselor, I think. Yeah, first counselor. I'm still learning because I'm green. And that was a great story, I feel like sharing, was Steve Barker, who was called to be elders quorum president. He kept getting this impression that he needed to call me as his first counselor. And he says, but I can't take away missionary work from Dennis. The missionaries love him. The sisters and elders love him. I can't take it away from him. And Heavenly Father kept saying, you need to call Dennis to be your first counselor. And then he realized when he was meeting with the presidency that the first counselor has the ability to oversee and be the ward mission leader, and then have an assistant ward mission leader or assistant ward missionary, and then call the ward missionaries. So he realized he wasn't taking that away from me. He was just adding to my plate, which to me was a blessing that he knows me by name, because he and his wife, even many people in the ward told me that story, because I was actually in Utah when I got called. And so we did it through FaceTime. And I just know that these callings are called by God. I can testify that our bishop is called by God, that our stake president's called by God, that our general authorities are called by God. And I have a really strong testimony to that. But I have an unofficial calling of, and I was set apart by a general authority to serve with missionaries all over the world. So I serve with mission presidents, I serve with stake presidents, and I help them better understand the LGBTQ plus or A, B, C, D, E, whatever it is, and every day it gets added to. community. And that's just been such a blessing. So I do anywhere from 12 to 18 home teachings a week with missionaries. So
Great. Andrew, how about you?
Well, he just took mine. I'm just kidding. I'm the ward mission leader as well. So, and I'm the first counselor in the elders quorum presidency. So I fall in that as well. I think I was called, specifically because COVID was coming. I work in video conferencing for a living, and I do a ton on social media, from being part of another podcast called The Cultural Hall and working their Twitter accounts, doing their social media. So if you ever see stupid comments on Twitter on The Cultural Hall, that's me. And I've been doing that for years. And so we pivoted very quickly into using those skills to keep the missionary work going during COVID. And it's showing a lot of success. So anyway, that's kind of where I come from. So bringing those skills in is what I brought.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. And Bradley.
So I'm kind of in between right now. The last calling I had was a family and temple history consultant. And that was really fun. I didn't do a whole lot with that, but mostly just looking at family history and helping people learn how to use family search and things like that. But right now I am at home because of COVID, and I haven't gone a formal calling with that. And I'll be leaving again in a few weeks. I like to think that my informal calling is Color the Campus, which is this organization that I started specifically for like CES schools to help the LGBTQ plus community gain some awareness and educate people on how to be a better ally. And that involves or takes up a lot of my time and effort. So, and I have a strong spiritual connection to that as well, that maybe people aren't super aware of, but it feels like a calling to me.
Well, I definitely believe that when you feel that God has given you a calling, that he definitely has. I currently am called to be a temple and family history consultant myself. And there are a lot of, not to be punny, but dead times. That it's just me and my relatives from across the veil. And then I'll get a question from the missionaries. Can I come help? I had the opportunity to come help a neighbor, help find her some of her family history. She's not a member of the church, but I tell you that I cried when she saw pictures of her grandparents and great-grandparents for the first time. She's adopted, and I cried. And it's those times. It was in a family history center that I saw a picture of my grandfather that passed away before I was born for the first time. So it's those things, that's what keeps me going back. I love family history. I absolutely love it. My favorite calling, and it's one that I just can't get enough of. So besides our callings, there are other things that we do in this world. We have, well, some of us have occupations. I'm going to come out right now and say that I am retired disabled. You can't tell it from my virtual background here because apparently Zoom thinks that my chair is part of the background, but I am in a power chair. I am a disabled person, and I live in a paradigm in the United States that makes it very difficult for me to have an occupation at the same time I'm disabled, as disabled people know. In order to be a functioning person, that is, be able to pay for all of the things that allow me to mitigate my disabilities, my caregiver, my equipment, my insurance and such, I would have to bring in about 10 times as much as most normal people do. So it's going to take a long process of me working my way to get off of disability, but I am working that way. I have my first book I am confident will be coming out next year. I've almost finished writing it. I have a literary agent that's nipping at my heels for it. And on that note, I'm going to give you to that literary agent right now, and he can talk about his occupation. Hi, Dennis.
Yes. Thank you. So I actually used to be really successful before I joined the church, and then it seemed like everything just unraveled. And I found out, I mean, my entire life I've driven Mercedes, and my first car when I was 16 years old was a Mercedes, and it was up until joining the church. I just ended up getting a Toyota, which is actually a missionary car. So I love it. But it's so God's teaching me to be more humble. But definitely joining the church and being asked to write a book, it kind of put a damper on my career. And so I was focusing so much on missionary work to keep the adversary at bay and to be gone and say, adversary, be gone, that I started getting this prompting to be a literary agent. And I'm dyslexic, and I'm going, what on earth is a dyslexic literary agent going to do representing LDS and Christian authors? So so it's been a project, because we don't get paid as literary agents until we sell a book. And I make 53 cents a copy of my hardback. And so as a literary agent, my agent gets 15% of that. So every $100 I make, she gets $15. So imagine how many books Sister Maggie Slighte has to sell for me to just pay my insurance. So I'm still kind of figuring out my path, but I'm trusting in Heavenly Father that there's a reason, because when I was given the calling, as my first calling was ward missionary, and I went, oh God, why me? Why did you call me as a ward? You know, I never served a mission. And what I should have been saying is, what do I need to be learning from this? Because I didn't know what pass along cards were, and zone meetings and district meetings. And so I needed to learn from my calling. And that's why I can testify that we are called by God. And so as I'm learning not to ignore the promptings of the Holy Ghost, because when I was asked to write my book, I ignored it. I looked at the general authority and said, you're nuts. I didn't join the church to write a book. We laugh at it now. So as a literary agent, I just sold my second book for 2 authors. And I'm hoping Maggie, the Car That Ran on Prayers, will be my third book I sell. And we're just super excited about it. But I should get my first paycheck in 2 years.
That's a long game. That's definitely a long game.
Yeah, but it's developing residual income too. So I mean, once I have 50 authors and they're all coming out with books every year or so, then it's developing relationships. So
well, on the theme of developing our occupations, why don't we move to Bradley now?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have an occupation. I'm only 23. I'm still a student.
That's your occupation.
Only.
That's your occupation.
Yeah, only.
Information for flights departing from.
I'll edit that out. I'll edit that right on out.
Yeah, I am still a student, so I have some idea of what I would like to do. As a career, I want to be in the field of forensic psychology and criminal psychology. So ideally something with like the FBI or who knows. But as far as getting to that point, I have no idea. I don't know what I need to do. And I got lots of time to figure that out, I guess. I had some things set up for this upcoming summer and even for now for this semester, but they all got canceled and postponed due to the pandemic. So we're just sitting tight and waiting till things show their way, because I don't know what I'm doing.
I have a feeling that God will show you the way.
I do too. I do as well.
Andrew, how about you?
Well, my profession is I'm a sales engineer, which my wife thinks sounds more like a janitorial engineer. It doesn't. It's not a real job, but no. I'm a network engineer and I'm a salesman. So I work in a highly technical environment, and everyone's very well aware of it now because of COVID. I work with hardware and that connects to things like Zoom. So microphones, video cameras for conference rooms, and a lot for personal devices right now. That's what I sell. So I work for a company called Poly, and that's my day job, but that's not my occupation. For years, I didn't know the difference between a profession and an occupation. And my occupation is I'm an author. A little over a year ago, I've been a writer and a blogger for several years, and a little over a year ago, I'm like, I gotta sit down and write this book. In fact, a friend of mine encouraged me to do it, and so I wrote my first book and self-published it in August. It's called Tales of a Paperboy: A Christmas Story, and I've got a whole team of other books ahead coming out of my brain at the moment. Once I kind of opened that door, it just kind of unleashed this huge thing, and I can barely keep them all in. I have to constantly have little notepads to write the ideas down so I can get to them later, because I'm currently working on something else or something. So that's my occupation. So profession and occupation, two different things.
I want to give Bradley another chance to mention his blogs if he would like to, because all four of us are writers.
Yeah, I was just thinking that as well, because I am writing a lot as part of my hobbies, I guess. I've have a couple books that I've been working on for quite a few years. I do a lot of social media posting. I have a podcast as well. So I put out a lot of content, and I feel like that's another one of my callings that I have is creating content for who knows who, I don't know, for me, maybe. But yeah, I do a lot of writing as well, and I really enjoy that. I write some poems here and there. So that's another thing we all have in common.
I have a belief that a job is only one of the ways you're going to make the people in the future will make a living.
Yeah. No, so I used to be the vice president of sales for a division of Procter & Gamble, and I covered their high-end hair care line. And I used to interview people, and I was in charge of 450 people, sales reps underneath me, and sales managers and team managers. So I traveled all over Asia, Europe, the US. And when I would interview somebody, if they would say the word, I would try to trick them to say the word job. And if they would say the word job, I'd be cut, they're done. I want to hear them say, it's my career. Because when they would tell me it's their career, I would know I want to hire
them. I've had many careers. I've had a few jobs, but I've had many careers. And I've had an enormous amount of lives.
But helping people, I guess, is doing service to others is one of the most rewarding things to me. And so when I'm able to tell somebody that that a church publisher or a Christian publisher like HarperCollins just took their manuscript and is going to make it into a book, that is so rewarding. I just have to figure out how to make money doing it.
I actually have a theory that everything we do is based on service. I don't care if you're a salesman or what you do, but whatever you do in our life is based on service. And if you can't see that, you're going to really struggle, because even the rich miser of Scrooge provided a service. It was a terrible service, but at least was a service to provide people homes and everything else. That's how he made money. Now, what he learned later on through the story of the Christmas Carol is that service was far beyond that. I always think that's an interesting juxtaposition when Jacob Marley says at the beginning, my business was people, and Scrooge hadn't figured that out yet. And even though he was providing a service, it was more about him taking from that service and instead of giving to that service. So
interesting.
I tend to bring Christmas up a lot, just so you know.
I love it.
Cool.
So
speaking of service, so I really was given a whisper about this show back in May and June, that it was a service that needed to happen for me. I needed to have an excuse to get together with other people and discuss Come Follow Me because I was alone and I needed more input. I needed to be able to share some of the insights that I was picking up in the scriptures. And I got excited about certain things. And I even put out a couple of quick videos saying how excited I was about certain things in the scripture. But without context, there was no audience for it. And I kept getting this whisper from the Holy Spirit that said, no, there needs to be a group. And it's not what you think it is. It's something that he had in mind, that they had in mind. And I'm just a pawn here. So I was the first person that I know of that got the whisper. And I'm going to kind of go in the order of the people that signed up. So we're going to go to Dennis next.
Yeah. The whisper was Maggie, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But originally, so I'm on my iPhone, and I like to walk when I talk because it gets me off the chair. And I was walking, and she's telling me this, and I'm going, oh my gosh, like I can't. My hours, I'm up until 3 a.m. and I get up at 5 a.m. I'm like, my days, on Instagram helping people. I mean, I'm a nano influencer on Instagram, and a lot of people reach out to me with a faith crisis, or their grandson just came out, or their granddaughter, or somebody. So, and she's telling me this, and I'm like, I can't do one more thing, like can't. But then I kept feeling her promptings, and then I started getting little promptings and whispers. And I think we should say for the next show how you were praying before General Conference, and we'll tell that story the next episode when we start off the first week of Come Follow Me, and what came to you.
Oh, we're going to go into that.
Well, it's powerful, but I think we should save it because I think it's so powerful. I think it'd be a great way to start the Come Follow Me program off.
But it's part of the motto. It's part of our reason for being here.
Yes. I don't know, Andrew. What do you think? We save it?
I think she should give a tease and then give us the full thing next time.
Yeah.
Okay. So Andrew, what was your feeling, or what have been your promptings about this show and what it could be?
Well, at first it was, who's this person who constantly is texting me on Facebook, and I'd heard you on the Cultural Hall talking about marijuana, and now all of a sudden I'm getting, because I make stupid jokes, I'm getting all these different little things here and there, and I was willing to help and whatever, and then I thought, you know what, this person should read my book. So I sent you the book, and once I sent you my book, we just started conversing about everything. And when I got the understanding of what you were doing, I thought, I'm not LGBTQ, but I want to be part of this. And it's because so much of my life has been touched by people who are LGBTQ, from my best friend to, I spent a lot of time in the theater world, so naturally there's a lot there, and others through work and everything else. I thought, I need to be part of this because I try to be a good LGBT ally, and I know I fall short. And I think my journey of understanding how to be better at that can be helpful to other people. So I kind of come to this is looking at from the perspective of, I'm going to say things that are wrong on air, and I'm going to be taught and trained what is wrong and what is right. And I think from that knowledge, other people can come along.
See, Andrew, I have this thing where, because I do so much public speaking, devotionals, and firesides all over the world, I don't get offended by what anybody says to me, because I know I had a returning missionary say, she wrote a quote in the beginning of my book, and she said that she was homophobic before serving with me. And she was from Brazil, and I made her replace that word homophobic with naive and innocent. because we're still learning. I'm still green. We are learning. We are constantly striving to be so we can hear him better all the time. So don't ever worry about offending us, or at least myself, because I mean, we can correct you so you can be politically correct, but I don't want our viewers to think that, you know, we're not approachable and that we would, you know, be offended if they didn't know the correct terminology. You know, a lot of people go, is it LGBT what? And I don't want to offend you. And I'm like, oh, please, you're not going to offend me.
Now, as a representative of the last letter of that LGBTQIA,
Yes.
having dated somebody who was I, having identified as A, I will say that those letters are important, but
Yes.
are also included when you say put a plus. It's okay there too.
I think we're moving to a stage where a new word has to be invented, right? That doesn't specifically call out one or the other, but includes them all. And it'd be interesting to see logistically what happens, linguistically what happens over the next few years. But
that's my department, because I texted my literary agent and my acquisitions editor at the church saying, I don't have my master's in linguistics from BYU. And it said, I don't have my master's in linguini at BYU. So, but no, it's but there are 18 different ways currently to identify yourself. There are so many. There's
just say the fun and fabulous members.
I like that. We're fun and fabulous.
So, as the fourth fun and fabulous member to get to get a whisper calling, Bradley, what did you think when I first dropped into your DMs? Actually, is what I did.
Yeah, I have an interesting social media presence, I guess, so to say. And so I was just thinking to myself, like, I haven't really done Come Follow Me. I haven't been able to really like participate in church too much. And when I do, there's always all these like microaggressions, and it's not very inclusive. And I kind of just feel like I don't have a safe space to express my opinions, my experiences, my testimony. So I was just thinking to myself, I was like, I want to do a Come Follow Me and have it be like inclusive. And so I tweeted like, hey, if I taught this Come Follow Me for the next year, like who would watch it? And like 250 people within like a couple hours said that they would watch it. And I was like, well, I was not expecting that many people. I was like, okay, maybe I'll have to actually like rethink this, because I don't know if I'm ready for that many people to watch it. And then Maggie DM'd me and was like, hey, like I'm doing this project. Like you said you were gonna do it on your own, but do you want to join this? And I was like, yeah, that sounds a lot better than what I had planned. So I don't know how I got roped into it. Like it just happened.
It's him.
Well, you put it out there.
Well, we all know that we all felt the promptings of the Spirit and the textings of Maggie to get here.
Don't even. So I have PTSD when it comes to Facebook, because it represents my past, and I have things show up on my news feed, and you know, I have 40-something-hundred friends, but I have over 4,000 unread messages on there. But I was not an influencer on Instagram until after I joined the church. So I kind of just stick with Instagram. I can't get Twitter to save my life.
And I don't get Instagram. I can do Twitter all day long, but I'm like,
I can do Twitter. I can do Instagram a little.
Pictures? Just send pictures. I don't get how I can communicate through pictures. I just don't get it.
A lot of my things go viral on Instagram, and I get a lot more engagement on Instagram. And it's just something that, plus, you know, it's just a lot of people have faith crisis and they reach out to me, and that's fine. So that's just that's my platform I choose for now. And I love it. I love interacting with people on Instagram and communicating with them. I'm still figuring out how to use it, but I kind of became like this influencer overnight, and where I get free socks and ties and you name it, it's just there.
My socks that I'm wearing now are free. Someone gave them to me.
Love it. Yeah. So So, hey, we all have different platforms. We could use that to reach out to others and share the gospel and light the world.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, my favorite social media platform for most of yeah has been Facebook. I've gone to the max on the friends, and then through broken relationships and through my conversion to the church and such, I've gotten rid of about 1,500 connections.
Yeah.
So I've got a little bit of room there, and that's how I like it, because I like to be able to at least have some comprehension of the people who are following me.
Facebook for me is my main one. Twitter is I usually do Twitter for the cultural hall, so I get to stay behind the anonymity of the entire cultural hall. So most people think what I say is Richie saying it, so I know I can get away.
I follow the cultural hall on Twitter.
Yeah, so when you think Richie's up there being a jerk or saying something weird, it's actually that's but most people blame Richie.
Well, I think it's funny because you brought up my my episode that I did with Richie of Cultural Hall that has to do with cannabis. And I'm not going to go into that right now. I am a medical cannabis patient, a legal medical cannabis patient here in the state of Washington. And we can talk about that more later, but not today.
Or you can search the cultural hall and hear the whole thing, and it's actually really good.
And I will tell you, if you want to look for the cultural hall show, it is episode number 420. And we're very happy about that.
Oh, that's right.
That's amazing.
I still don't know what 420. I still don't know what 420 means. Oh, yeah, okay. Now I get it. Blonde moment.
You, Dennis. Okay, and on that note, let's give everybody just a piece of love and light for the week ahead. And this is our introductory episode, so we just want to.
And we challenge you to choose love.
I want to send a bit.
We'll come up with an ending in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We'll figure something out.
My ending is always love and light from Maggie Slighte because it rhymes. But we need something from all of us.
I think Al Caraway uses that. I'm always sending you love and light your way.
I don't know what rhymes with Mair except for hair, and nothing that sounds really good when it comes to that. So I can't really put that in there.
Well, we all have a pretty good crop. I keep fertilizing it.
Come on, give us some feedback to wrap this thing up.
I don't know what else to say. Just, I'm excited for this. I hope you are too.
Absolutely. I
am. I'm very excited to see where this is going to go, and I'm more than being excited to see where this goes. I am excited for our audience. I am excited to be a place where everybody can come, where there won't be cringy moments, and if there are cringy moments, we'll talk them out, because we want you to know that you're loved. All of you. Every single person. We love you. And so does God.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna